The Britain of the year 2000 was unimaginable at the end of the Victorian era in 1901. The 20th century saw the two world wars catalyzing almost social change across the country, including dramatic enhancements in health and education. The motor car stormed through town and country, transforming both, and Britain no longer ruled a third of the planet. The brief but unexpectedly successful reign of the flamboyantly enthusiastic Edward VII, 1901 to 1910, is sometimes seen as an untroubled Indian summer, an appendix to the Victorian age, with grey country houses at the apogee, and an ever-growing middle class. Living conditions for the urban and rural poor, however, were often squalid and forces of radical change were already at work. The social reforms of the Liberal government of 1901 to 1914 laid the foundations of what would become known as the welfare state. The First World War brought the front line to the civilian population. Zeppelin and aircraft raids targeted London and other towns on the East Coast. Both Whitby Abbey and Scarborough Castle in North Yorkshire were hit. The wartime state extended its control over people's lives in an unprecedented way, with conscription, increased taxation and censorship. Over 1.6 million women replaced conscripted men in the workplace. Country houses such as West Park, Bedfordshire, and Osborne on the Isle of Wight were used as hospital and convalescent homes for wounded soldiers. War ended on the continent but broke out in Ireland with the Anglo-Irish Wars, 1919 to 1921. Recession followed a brief post-war economic recovery. Troubled industrial relations led to the only general strike in British history in 1926. From the early 1920s, the Labour Party, founded in 1900, overtook the Liberal Party in general elections. The slump following the Wall Street crash of 1929 hamstrung economic reconstruction and meant continuing hardship, particularly in industrial areas. In the post-war territorial carve-up, Britain gained mandates over a number of former German and Ottoman territories. British control now extending over more of the globe than ever before. But closer to home, Ireland was partitioned and the Irish Free State became independent in 1922. 1939. Britain found itself at war with Germany for the second time in a generation. After the defeat-turned propaganda triumph, miracle of Dunkirk, planned in Dover Castle's secret wartime tunnels. In 1940, Britain stood alone, unified behind Churchill. Victory in the Battle of Britain greatly raised morale, and subsequent Blitz air raids on London, Coventry and many other towns failed to significantly lower it. By 1943, Britain had become a junior partner in an alliance dominated by the USA and the Soviet Union. Allied bombing from British bases and the 1940 D-Day landings hastened Germany's drawn-out defeat. The 1945 election saw unexpected Labour bringing with it nationalisation and welfare state legislation, which included the creation of the National Health Service. Post-war, architects and planners were confident they could raise standards of living with housing projects in Britain's cities and in new towns. Meanwhile, the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II 1952 to present, the first to be televised, prompted talk of a new Elizabethan age. During the later 1950s and the 1960s, cars, washing machines, fridges, telephones, and holidays all became increasingly affordable elements of everyday life. In 1957, Harold Macmillan could proclaim prosperity such as we have never had in the history of this country. Popular commercial music in Britain appeared at least until the 7th century ballad. Popular music in the modern sense began to emerge in the 1950s as American styles of jazz and rock and roll became popular. The revival of a skiffle was an early attempt to create a British form of American music, but it was the emergence of British rock and roll in the early 1960s that established a viable UK popular music industry. Genres such as the beat and the British blues were exported to the United States by bands such as the Beatles and the Rolling Stones in a movement called the British Invasion. The development of blues rock helped differentiate rock and pop music, leading to the emergence of various rock subgenres in the 1970s. In the 1990s, preferences began to shift from British to American English as the chosen standard for second language acquisition in many places. The twin influences of British and American broadcasting media make the language more and more accessible to the public. Hollywood and the pop music industry are helping to make English an irresistible medium for the transmission of popular culture. Even long-established European cultures are beginning to feel linguistically and culturally threatened as English is becoming more and more widely used, and large numbers of English borrowers are entering the languages. 20th century communication revolution spread a few languages at the expense of many. World languages begin to die out on a larger scale as the mastery of certain world languages becomes necessary for survival. Classification and description of non-Indo-European languages by linguists continues, often in a race against the clock.